On this episode, we talk about the concept of God's will. Just what does it mean to follow God's will? Does God have a specific purpose for each one of us? Is this will or this law, is it hyper-specific, or is it a very general, i.e., look after everybody, care for everybody, or are some of us called to do very specific things in life? And how do we know if we're following God's will? Are we following our own will? Or is someone trying to impose their will onto you, claiming it is God's will? How do we tell the difference between these three examples? David, go.
I suppose notions about the will of God have been the bread and butter of human beings when they want to impose their self-understanding on something.
Yes, seeing the world
they transfer it onto God in their image and then impose it on the world. It's curious to me, Vladimir. You know, one of the amazing things about the Christian revelation, you know, we have this revelation that God became a human being in the Rabbi of Nazareth. And that, as many of the ancient church fathers and spiritual mothers have taught us, that was the way in which God no longer was in control.
Keep going.
That was the way that God said, I want you for love, and I want you to be with me in love. Where there is the exercise of control and power, there is no love.
It's force.
And since God is, it's force. And since God is love, these notions of God's will as being imposed are, it's a form of dressed up Christianized paganism.
Very powerful words, but okay, go on.
So, what's the real issue here? Since we say that God has created the world and saw that it was good, that God creates every human being. I love the way the Jews put it, you know, they say that there's three present at every conception. There's obviously a woman, and there is a man, and there is God.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way of saying that every human being born into the world is meant to be. Every human being born into the world is meant to be and is perfectly unique. We will never see their like again. So when we speak of God's will, we should take a lesson out of the Gospels. Since God created you and me, and since God created us out of love, what would God want us to be? Would he want us to be a replica of something? Or would he want us to be who we are?
Free.
Free, who we are.
Ability to think and to act.
That's right.
And to make our own decisions.
To flourish. As we were created to be. God doesn't work with templates. It's the big difference between the old struggles around worship in the first 3 centuries of the church in the Roman Empire, where you had to worship the image stamped on the coin.
Oh, yes.
The image of the emperor stamped on the coin. That image was always the same image stamped on the coin. That's not the way God works. God creates each human being in their own marvelous particularity. And the only will, I think I can say this with ease, what God wills is that you become whole.
Mm-hmm.
And to become whole is not to be a replica, is not to do your parents' bidding, is not to be some kind of virtuous creature
Yep.
that is idealized. It's for the fullness of your being to flourish. Or it's what the Greeks love to call erete, which we would translate excellence or virtue. Virtue is not values. It's so interesting how when values language entered the West in the 18th century along with capitalism, it expunged virtue language. Virtue means, and Socrates was preoccupied with this, as was Jesus Christ and the Apostle Paul. Virtue is, what is the excellence that is you?
Mm-hmm.
That's what God wills. And that can manifest itself 10,000 different ways, and there is no right way. The only thing that's significant in it is your fullness, your coming into the fullness of being. God wants you to be who God made you to be.
And
that is a surprise even to God. Because God is love and wants the surprise from his children.